What up, though? Welcome back to another episode of Too Good to Be Drew. I'm your host, you guessed it, Drew J. Davis. And today we're going to be jumping in. Like I said, we're going to use these episodes so I can introduce myself to you guys so you can get a better sense of who I am as a person. You know, I'm a certified life and performance coach who works with athletes, high performing individuals, and also men. But outside of that, the journey started a long time ago. And the identity I had early in my life was an athlete. I know my earliest memories of me watching football games on Saturday and Sunday, hoping and wishing that one day I can play in college and go on and play in the NFL. That's what I wanted to be. I remember in second grade, my teacher asked us what we wanted to be when we grew up. And they went around the room, and one young lady said she wanted to be a veterinarian. Another person said she wanted to be a doctor. A guy said he wanted to be a fireman. Some other dude said he wanted to be Batman. I think we all wanted to be Batman at some point in time. And she got to me and she said, Drew, what do you want to be? I said, I want to be a professional football player. And out of everything that everybody else said, she comes up close to me and she goes, Drew, you know that's going to be very hard to do, right? So I'm young. I'm not the smartest I can be in my life, but I'm pretty smart. I said, hold on. That person said they wanted to be a doctor. That person said they wanted to be a veterinarian. That person said they wanted to be Batman. I know that's hard as hell to do. But you heard me say that I wanted to be a professional athlete, and you didn't say anything else to them about how hard it would be, but you wanted to make sure you came up to me and say that. Now, this teacher, who I can't even remember her name, never saw me play organized football or out on the playground or anything, probably. So she didn't know how good I was or how athletic I could be. So I don't blame her. We're just going to use her in this story as what not to do and what not to say to little kids. But after that, I remember I started playing football in third or fourth grade, started playing in Denver, Colorado for this team called the Montbello Falcons in Montbello. And that's when I was my first introduction. Well, hold on. Let me stop. I got to go back. So there was a year that my parents decided to sign me up for baseball. So we go out, we play baseball with this team. That's where I met my little brother and a whole bunch of people and guys that I know. Played on a team, Montbello Falcons baseball team. And after that year playing baseball, the coach wanted to go up and ask my mom, "Hey, do you think we can get him to play on? Can we ask you for Drew to play on our football team?" My mom was really, really nervous. My mom was like, I don't know. I don't want him to get hurt. And the coaches stopped her right there. They said, ma'am, Mrs. Washington, we don't think you need to worry about Drew getting hurt. We think you need to worry about Drew hurting other players. So after that, it was history. Played football the next year. I was one of the biggest kids out there. I was so big, and not big like fat, but I was big. In Colorado, we had a weight limit. You had to be under a certain weight to be allowed to touch the ball pretty much or to carry the ball. And so I remember before this practice that we were supposed to go weigh in at this place. I forgot. I wanted to call it the Salvation Army, but it's not the Salvation Army. It's at this military kind of complex. And I remember that day the coaches told me, hey, don't eat anything before. And after practice, they made me run. I'm like, why I gotta run? Why am I getting punished? But what they were trying to do is they were trying to make sure that I was underweight so I could play running back, the position that they had me at. So I remember at the weigh-in, I was the only kid, like they stripped me down to my underwear, took my shoes off, took my socks off. I'm down to my underwear getting on this scale. And that'll probably be child abuse these days. But I get on the scale, and I think the weight limit was 80 pounds at the time. Was it 80? All right, let's say it was 80 pounds at the time. I'm 8 years old. And we ended up being under 80 pounds. And I knew I was very good very early. I knew I was very good. The coaches would give the ball to somebody on first down. They would try to throw it or hand it to somebody else on second down. They might even give it and give another play and give it to somebody else or try to throw it on third down. And then on fourth down, they would run a play called 48 sweep, where they just toss the ball to me going to the right or to the left, and I would break and hit down the sideline and run all the way for a touchdown. It got to be so bad. Like I said, I was one of the biggest kids out there. So it got to be so bad that other coaches were asking our coaches for my birth certificate because they didn't believe I was that age. And it also got so it also happened so often that our head coach just started keeping my birth certificate in his back pocket. So the coaches would walk across the field. I don't believe he's 8 years old. Da, 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 da. Here you go, sir. Cool. Get it back. Let's keep going on this game. And so we were really successful. So from an early age, I knew I was very gifted athletically. So at a young age, I knew I was very gifted. And growing up, I played football, baseball, and basketball. I ran track for one day and found out that that was not for me. But I more so like to be outside or be out running and be able to have a ball or something to like, you know, I just can't run to a finish line. You want me to run a 400? Like, and the prize is that I is my time that I ran. Like, in practice is just running. I don't know if I can do that. So I played football, baseball, basketball growing up. And once I got to high school, I gravitated more just towards football and baseball. Like I said, I loved football and I also loved baseball because it was the first sport that I played. I played basketball in middle school, but I didn't love it. I played it because other people were playing it. I was good. I wasn't great. I could score, but it wasn't nothing to call home about. So once I got to high school, I started to focus on baseball and football. And the reason that I could do that was because football was at one time of the year, and then you had some time in between, and then you had baseball season in the spring. And so I played baseball on and off. I played baseball my freshman and my junior year, but I played football every year inside of that. And one of the great things about this time period is that's when I really figured out that it's time to get serious about playing football if I wanted to pursue it, if I wanted to go to college and play it. And so that's when I started spending a lot more time focusing on football. Around that time, we got a new coach at the high school, at Marbella High School that I was at. His name was Oliver Lucas. He was a coach during CU's glory days, when they won late in the late 80s, early 90s. And so he comes down and he coached across town at Thomas Jefferson at one point as well. And so he comes down and he's whipping our program into shape. And this is when we started to get a lot of prominent coaches, guys that you had heard their name, 10 or 15 years ago, not even 10 or 15, what am I doing? 5 or 10 years ago in the city of Denver, whether they played at CU or whether they played college football, they were now coming back to coach. I looked at it and I said, I really think college is a possibility for me, like to go play. And so that's when I started putting a lot more time in. And I remember going from eighth to ninth grade, we started summer workouts with the high school. And I remember they were hard. We're going from the weight room to running on the track. And I was like, if this what football is, man, we got a long journey ahead of us. But that was good because like I said, I had the athletic ability. I had been putting in the work and I was learning how to work even harder now because I was at this level where, hey, this is where it really counts. And so going into my freshman year of high school, I played running back. I played on all three levels. Played freshman, JV, and varsity. I played running back on freshman. I played wide receiver on JV, and I played quarterback on varsity. And I think on varsity that year, I maybe got in one or two games, like nothing much. But I'm pretty much going and playing 2 games a week with freshman and JV. And so I excel and I do really well in high school. But the thing that I wanted to talk about and the thing I wanted to tell athletes is if you have a young athlete, high school is where you need to start to zero in on what you really want to do. And more so than zero in on it, you need to put in the work to be able to be successful at it. So like I said, for we're going into freshman year of high school, and that summer I'm in the weight room and I'm doing their conditioning program. And then we go through my first season, and when the season ends, now we transition back into the weight room to lifting, to getting our body stronger, to getting our muscles bigger, to protect us from injury, to look good too. Curls for the girls, right? To look good too. And you transfer that, you go through that through the whole winter, and then you pop out in the spring, and then you guys have spring ball, and you go into summer workouts, and then the next season. But like I told you guys, I played football and baseball during this time. So I played it my freshman and my junior year. And I'm not going to say my high school coach didn't like me playing baseball, but I also started to realize like, yo, I'm spending time playing baseball and I was very good at baseball. But I said, this is less time I get to focus on football. So while my football team and my teammates are out here working on football, I'm over here playing baseball, trying to be the next thing Barry Bonds or Bob Gibson or something. And so the next year, that's why I did not play baseball. Well, I broke my hand fighting in the bathroom. Not gonna lie. We won't talk about that right now. But the next year I skipped baseball, focused solely on football going into my junior year. And my junior year is where I recorded 26 scholarship offers to Division One schools. And you hear that number now, and people probably have twice that, amount. But I had 26 offers my junior year of high school, so many offers that I stopped accepting offers going into my senior year. And when I was a junior, I was playing wide receiver. So I had fully made the transition to playing wide receiver. Was very good at it. Was, I think, all state that year, with a lot of other great people. We were very successful as a team. And taking that, then I was able to focus on the schools that I wanted to go to. Now, I was getting letters all the time, and this is back in the day when they were sending letters to show their interest. But after I got all these letters, I zeroed down the schools I wanted to go to. And me being a receiver, I wanted to go to a school that threw the ball. And around this time, it was most likely a Pac 10 school. They threw the ball a little bit more than all these other conferences. But I also knew at this point where I'm getting these scholarships, a big weight off my shoulder was that my parents weren't going to have to pay for my school, weren't going to have to pay for me to go to school. And I can honestly say that, like a lot of Black families, we hadn't been saving up for me to go to college. So it was going to be taking out loans if I wanted to go to school anyway. We never even like discussed, college and what it would cost and where I could go. And so it was very calming to me that I wasn't going to have to scratch and claw and figure out where I was going to school and how much money I had, that I was going to receive a full ride scholarship to whatever school I wanted to go to. My grades were great. I had a 4.0 GPA. I think I had like an 18 on the ACT. I took the SAT only because I think Stanford wanted it. I didn't score great on that, but I took it. And so I put myself in the best position to not be held back to going to any of these schools, which is very important to me. And so the top schools I decided on were UCLA, Cal, Oregon, and Washington. And so going into my senior year, I also found I also came to the reality that I could graduate early. And my high school coach, Coach Houston, brought that up to me. He said, "Where you at credits wise? Okay, hey, how do you feel about graduating early and going to college and being on campus in the spring?" And I was like, that sounds pretty cool. Nowadays, you have a lot of guys graduating early now to go enroll in school and get started and things like that. But when I did it, I was one of the few people that I knew that graduated early and went to college. And just to give you an idea, I graduated, and I'm jumping forward a little bit, but hang with me. I graduated, took those. I think I took off, or I just started working a job uh, from January to March because Oregon was on not a semesters, but a quarter system. And so I could, enroll in the spring and March when it came and be there for spring ball. So I can graduate, take that time off up until spring ball, and then enroll and go to school. So knowing this, I had to go speak to the principal and go speak to my counselor and got everything okayed. But once this timeline sped up with me having to make this decision, which people in college usually make that decision around signing day, which is February, I was going to have to make this decision in December. So I would have to take all of my trips. And back then we were allotted 5 trips to go check out a school on official visits, spend a weekend there, have them pamper you, cater to you, show you what life will be like here if you come. And out of these 4 schools, I dwindled it down after I took these visits. I dwindled it down to Oregon and UCLA. And anybody that knows me knows that my dad's African, and all Africans care about is education. And all he wanted to talk about was how great of an opportunity it would be to go to UCLA, and a degree from there would open up the world and I would be able to work where I wanted to work and all this and all that, blah, 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 blah. But on my trips to both of these schools, they were polar opposite as far as experience. UCLA, I went to the game where they beat USC. I want to say the score was, I think, 7-6 or something like that, when they knocked them out of the Rose Bowl, the national championship or something. There were parties everywhere. They were filming a movie on campus. It was almost December. It was November, December, and the weather was like 70, 75. Sun was nice. It was out. Everything that could possibly go good on this trip went great. On the other hand, my trip to Oregon, it was rainy the whole time. They got their butt kicked by Arizona. Their running back at the time ran for 100 something, 200 yards. The best thing I remember from that trip was a bowl of clam chowder that was in a bread bowl. 'Cause I was like, man, I'm from the hood. I ain't never had no stuff like this. I can come out here and get this. I would just eat this every day of the week. And then outside of that, I got to look at some Nike gear, some nice uniforms, and to look at that. But outside of that, the trip wasn't that great. But one thing that really set itself apart were the people and the continuity. Oregon's coaching staff, the majority of them had been there, 10, 15, 20 plus years. Coach Bellotti, who was a head coach at the time, had been the head coach for upwards of 10 or 15 years, more than 10 or 15 years, somewhere around there. The weightlifting coach, the strength and conditioning coach, Coach Jimmy Radcliffe, had been there for upwards of 20 years, if not 25 years. There was continuity across the coaching staff. I could go through and name the linebackers coach, Coach Pelham, the running backs coach, Gary Campbell, the defensive coordinator, Coach Aliotti, Nick Aliotti. I can just go through all these positions, and there was just a lot of continuity and anybody that knows anything about college football, either you're doing really well or you're doing pretty bad, and you'll get either promoted or you'll get fired. And so you don't see very many coaching staffs, or you won't see very many coaching staffs these days with continuity like they had. And they also had a lot of stuff. They were building a new treatment center. They had Phil Knight money. They had Nike money, which, that money long. They had Nike money. And the people were great. The staff was great. I remember the person that was showing me around between guys like Jeff Eberhard and Josh Gibson. They're showing me around. I'm driving me around in their rental car, and I just remember at one point a song came on, and it's only a song I would listen to. It's a Down South song. I think it was Trey the Truth. I think it was Pop My Trunk. It was some rendition of that, and I was like, I should not be hearing this at the University of Oregon in November from a white guy who's driving me around. Granted, he probably did his research on me, probably knew what songs I liked and everything. But I asked him, I said, "Hey, is this your CD?" He was like, "Yeah, this is mine." I said, You listen to this music? Like this is your music?" He was like, "Yeah." So, like I said, he could have been lying to me, but I think he was telling the truth. I think I've been able to ask him as we've been growing, and I think he told me he really does listen to that music. But it was one of those things. If anybody knows the word kismet, kismet means fate. It means destiny. There's this other term called God's wink, and and God's wink pretty much says you're at exactly where you need to be at the exact right time. And we'll talk and we'll have an episode about that in the future. But I was like, how is it that I'm on this trip and this song that I really like, that's a Southern song, gets played on a CD by this white guy? I was like, man, they trying to hustle me. I was like, ain't no way. But it was a small inkling that let me know that that's where I needed to be. And so, like I said, the whole trip was horrible, but the coaching staff was good. The staff around it, the recruiting staff was very good. The training staff was good. And when it was time to make my decision after I left there, um, and this is another big thing. UCLA's head coach was a black guy, which was good, black coach, African American, named Carl Durrell. And so I was like, man, it would be so great for me to play for African American coach. I'm pretty sure he can, he can speak to what we go through. I can relate to him on another level. But one of the biggest factors is I fell in love with Oregon because I felt really safe, but also I didn't know how long Coach Durrell would be at UCLA. I thought he could get fired. I knew I'd probably have a different coach during my time at UCLA. And lo and behold, I think Carl Durrell was fired that next year because his record hadn't been good up to that point. And so when it got time for me to decide in high school, I sat down and I picked the University of Oregon. One, because of those reasons, but two, we also looked at stats. And this is what I talk to a lot of student athletes and parents about. You're over here, you're making these decisions now with NIL, and you're looking at who can give you the most money, the most opportunity for brands and things like that. But in actuality, one of the biggest things you need to be, are you going to be able to perform? Are you going to be happy while you're there because you get to, one, because you get to play, and two, you get to produce. A lot of people that are going to college want to be able to get these stats to be able to go and play in the NFL, which is a very important thing. So if you go to a school that only throws the ball 10 times a game and you're a wide receiver, unless you're going to go 2 catches for 100 yards every game, it's not a great situation for you to be in. And so my high school coach and I, Coach Houston, we sat down, we looked up the stats to both schools. And Oregon's leading receiver was a receiver with, I want to say, 60 or 70 catches for nearly 1,000 yards and maybe around 8 or 9 touchdowns. And UCLA's leading receiver was a running back with maybe like 30 catches, 40 catches. So that was another red flag right there for me where I was like, you go to UCLA, shoot, they're not even throwing the receivers, they throwing the running backs. And so that was kind of the thing that pushed our decision to what it was by the experience at Oregon. And it was a gut feeling, I would say. Like you said, you look on paper and you're like, they got beat. It rained the whole time. You had a sourdough, you had some clam chowder in a sourdough bowl, like whoop-de-doo. But the continuity with the staff was great. The opportunity to come in and play or contribute early was something. But also just knowing that, yo, if you come here and you play and you start and you're good, you're probably going to be the lead. You're probably going to be the number one receiver, and the number one receiver gets 60 or 70 balls a year. And that's good enough to make it to the NFL if you do it right. And so I just wanted to take this time for this episode to talk a little bit about my early journey as a student athlete heading into college. I'll get you guys another episode down the road where we talk about college and the NFL and what that experience was like, a little bit more adversity, some fun wedged in between, going off and being away from home. I never got homesick, but we'll talk about that all later. But I hope you've enjoyed this episode talking about the athlete journey for me as a kid and kind of in my adolescence and into high school. And I hope you look forward to getting to know me better as I drop these episodes for you. Once again, that is Too Good to Be Drew. I'm your host, Drew J. Davis. You guys stay healthy.